The Crown of Nightingale by Joseph Wolfe. Chapter 1. Donovan held back the flap to the fortune-teller's tent. "Here goes nothing," he thought as he stepped inside. "You come seeking the future, child of Driggin?" the fortune-teller asked him. Donovan examined her. She bore a head covering of thick purple cloth, patterned with golden-colored thread. Each part of the pattern was a different god symbol. "I'm no child of Driggin." Donovan did not like that distinction, but his long black hair, pale skin, and green eyes placed his ethnicity in the kingdom of the vengeful god. The fortune-teller's silver and black brows raised slightly, her tan skin wrinkling her forehead into 3 small lumps. She held out her hand, her long red fingernails indicating a seat for Donovan on a cushion across from her. "What is it you seek, and what god do you answer to?" Donovan closed his eyes and took a breath. This was always where things went awry with soothsayers. "I want to remember my past and who I am. If any of the gods can do that for me, maybe I'll start believing in one." The fortune-teller suddenly scowled. "Soul burned," she spat. "Don't waste my time, little rat. Get you gone. The wisdom of Sorsha is not for your kind." Donovan sighed. If his Driggin ancestry didn't turn people away, his injury certainly did. "Thanks for your time," he said as he stood. "It's not free," she all but screamed at him. Donovan slowly turned his head to her. "My apologies," he growled as he reached into his cloak and pulled out a worthless wooden coin. "Here, this'll help you as much as you've helped me." He dropped the coin into the pot on his way out. "Kvar curse you, son of Driggin. May she always be against you." "Add her to the list," Donovan mumbled as he stepped out of her tent. He let the tent flap to the entry fall behind him, and he paused for a moment to sigh. Outside, the early evening streets of Nightingale were alive with merchant carriages, shopper foot traffic, and the cries of tradesmen and women hawking their wares. It was chaos. It was home. Donovan pulled his hood up, more for concealment than warmth. It was the middle of fall and the cold days were ahead. His business would pick up with the cold. He was a fur hunter. Donovan started walking home. Roman would probably want to help with the shop, and if not, Martha would want something to do with him. It wasn't good for him to be out when they needed him, not since Lionel passed. As he rounded a corner, 2 Nightingale guards stumbled out of a tavern, their white tabards with the purple bird in the center stained by their evening meal. They spotted Donovan and quickly shuffled to block his path. Where are you going, soul burned?" one of the 2 said. He was clean-cut as required by the guard, but his voice was rough, his manners rougher. The guard wasn't all that picky about who they took in. As long as you followed the rules, were not a soul burned, and were not full-blooded fae, you could make a bit of gold. "Forgive me, but you're in my way," Donovan said in an even tone. The other guard, shorter but stronger looking, shoved Donovan against the cobblestone wall. "Looks like you aren't going anywhere, so we can't be in your way. Makes sense?" "Asshole," Donovan grunted. That earned a punch to the gut, the cobblestone wall being an unwilling participant, adding backstop to the blow. Donovan groaned and braced himself, but the next punch didn't come. A whistle from down the street drew the attention of the 2 guards. Officer Jillian, one of the leaders in the guards, was calling for the 2 to come help her. She stood next to a vegetable cart that had lost a wheel and was blocking the street. "You lucked out this time, Hollow Man," the gruff-voiced one said. They took a second to toss him to the ground before moving on. Donovan's head snapped at a loud thud. Across the street, a stone carver was using a technique to slice a large chunk out of a rock with a blade. Donovan stood for a moment and listened closely as the craftsman muttered, "Sunder." The blade in his hands glowed a bright orange before he ran it through the stone like a knife through lard, another crash following. "Imagine using such a gift for something so mundane. If I could use the magic, I would change things for the better around here." "Donovan!" A familiar voice called out. He gave a start and turned. Farmer Crandall stood next to a horse-drawn cart and waved at him far too enthusiastically. He was a good man, but a little overly optimistic for Donovan's taste. "Crandall, always a pleasure," he lied. "How's the farm?" Crandall was short and stocky, nearly bald on the top of his round head and full in his cheeks. Farming had treated him well. "Better since your help last week. I couldn't have made the repairs to the barn without your help." "Don't mention it," Donovan said, which was code for "please, mention it, a lot. My reputation needs all the help that it can get." "I brought something for you. Thought you could make some money off it." The farmer turned his wagon and started working at a knot holding down a blanket and bundle. Donovan raised an eyebrow. Farmer Crandall wasn't poor, so to speak, but he had 7 children and did not have extra gold to go around. The farmer scattered long sections of rope as he finished undoing the knot, then took the blanket off. There rested the carcass of a female stone lion. Donovan grimaced. "You shouldn't have." "Nonsense! One of me traps caught her trying to get my cows. The meat's too grimy and stringy for most, but the fur is good." The two paused and looked at each other. Then the farmer waved his hands to indicate the stone lion. "Well, aren't you going to take her?" "Drag it through town?" Donovan asked incredulously. The farmer pulled the rope that he had bundled the animal in, and she flopped off the back end of the wagon. "Why not? You don't have far to go, do ya?" Donovan could have said no, but he didn't have a lot of friends in Nightingale, and Crandall had a lot of sway with the farmers. When business was bad, Donovan picked up a lot of extra gold as a hired hand on the farms. He couldn't let that opportunity go, and the farmers were the only ones willing to hire the soul-burned god-hater. "All right. Thanks, Crandall." The farmer smiled and took his seat at the front of the cart. He grabbed hold of the reins and waved. "I know people don't think much of you, Donovan, but you're a good man. That's all that matters to me." Donovan smiled a little, waved goodbye, and the farmer was off. It was just Donovan and his new, less lively friend now. He grabbed the rope and dragged the heavy carcass. "What a pain," he grunted. "But the fur is worth a few coins, and Martha can make any meat edible." Donovan turned on to Half Street and had a straight shot to the shop. He had only to survive what he called the gauntlet. First up, Linda, the soap maker. "Donovan!" she called out. "You should try one of my specialty creations. It'll get you clean for a change. Maybe let the ladies see that distinguished jaw of yours free of dirt for once." Donovan knew that the only difference between her specialties and her normal soaps was a bit of honey, and a much higher cost. Still, it sounded heavenly. Today was one of the days where the Nightingale baths were open. And for another hour or two, he thought as he guessed the time. But on his last visit, everyone glared at him and his scar, a nasty thing that ran down his neck toward his heart. "Another time," he called back and continued on. Round 1 was over, but the gauntlet had much more to come. Round 2, the prostitutes. He needed another dozen paces before he saw the first one. She was preoccupied this time, a strong-looking fellow putting coins into her hand. "Blasted mercs," he muttered. "Curse them and their whoring and looting." He looked again and noticed the mercenary's forearm had a tattoo of Kvar, who was supposed to be the righteous matron of war. Kvar did not allow prostitution. "They call me the god-hater, but at least I don't claim to serve one and do the opposite. That is the greatest form of hatred I can imagine." He looked up in the direction of the Chapel of Kvar, its tall tower visible from near anywhere in the city. The kingdom of Kvar, named after the goddess, owned Nightingale. They routinely took hefty tributes to exchange for protection. Donovan spat and immediately realized that he was about to enter round 3 of the gauntlet. "Hey! Ew!" A clearly drunk man, Dadokian by the look of his big sailor forearms, lumbered over to Donovan a few paces. "You want to apologize for that?" Donovan recoiled from his foul breath. The concept of personal space was clearly not at play. "Wasn't directed at you." "You think that I'm some kind of idiot?" "Yes," Donovan thought. "Yes," he said. He braced himself for a punch when a man's eyes caught the lioness that he was dragging. He laughed, his mouth opening to reveal teeth the color of old butter. The foul smell has layers, many, many layers, Donovan thought as he pulled his head back as far as he could go without taking a step. That your pet? Not looking good, is he? The drunken sailor asked. Just taking a little nap. You hear that, boys? The drunkard spun around, and Donovan realized that he was not alone. 3 more men, also Didakian, were seated outside with their drinks and keeping a careful eye on the situation. They glared at Donovan. This could actually be bad. I wonder if Roman is headed this way by chance. The drunkard spun back around, nearly tripped on himself, and grabbed onto Donovan's shoulder for support. Your poor pet, he's speaking to me. Sounds like a spiritual experience. He's saying that you're a wee little man who wets the bed at night. Wow, what do you think of that? Donovan shrugged. Well, don't listen to him. He's lying. The drunkard's face turned to stone for a second, then split open in the loudest, smelliest laugh Donovan had ever experienced. He waved for Donovan to come over and join them at their table. I'll be right back. Gotta make sure my pal here is taken care of, he said, and continued on down the street. None of them pursued. Donovan grinned. Gauntlet complete. I didn't know that you made gauntlets. Donovan turned to the speaker, his grin widening. Alexis, good to see you! She smiled back and gave him a quick hug. Her long brown hair brushed past Donovan's nose, and he caught a scent of vanilla. I hope none of my men are giving you any trouble. Donovan realized his hand was clutching his chest from the blow that he took earlier and quickly moved it. No, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Alexis raised her hand. Names, now, and I'll have them all do 100 laps around the barracks in chainmail. Everything is fine, he said, trying to keep the tone believable. He could tell that she didn't buy it. Just drop it, please. If you get involved, it'll only get worse. She frowned. We will see about that. I sure hope not. She sighed and shook her head. Other than problems with my men, how have you been? What's with the dead animal? Well, I am a fur hunter. Yes, but usually you have a litter for it, or something besides dragging it along the streets. One of the farmers just gave it to me. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that you're making nice with them. Remember what happened when you first arrived? Donovan's lips tightened. I thought we agreed not to speak of the thirsty horse incident. You just mentioned it, not me. Donovan rolled his eyes. Alexis laughed. I'm teasing. Come get a drink with me. I'll buy the first round. Donovan felt his face flush. He wanted nothing more than to spend the night with Alexis in more ways than one. But they were only friends and he had responsibilities. Besides, it would be political suicide for her. I can't. I promised Roman and Martha that I would bring them dinner and, well, this is it. He indicated the stone lion. Ugh, my condolences to your taste. How about tomorrow night? Donovan smiled. Sounds good. It's settled then. The thirsty horse. Tomorrow at sundown.